What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our Big 12 football channel.
2019 was a disappointing year for Iowa State, a team that many people consider to be a dark horse contender in the Big 12. And they lost a lot of close games. The schedule for them, of course, they have the same schedule as everyone else in the Big 12, except for the home and away games are different. So the schedule wasn't really, that was not to blame for them not doing a little bit better in the conference. They also played Iowa in the non-conference, who they play every year. They didn't have any other real challenge on that 2019 schedule. And that's something that I've heard Iowa and Iowa State fans kind of complain about because they play each other every year. It kind of limits them from being able to schedule other big non-conference opponents, because if you have two really tough non-conference games plus your conference schedule, that would make for a really difficult schedule. But let's take a look at this 2020 schedule. They open up the year on September 5th against South Dakota at home. Next game on the road at Iowa. Pretty much every year they play week 2. They'll play on September 12th, week 2. Again, this year, that is always one of the more underrated games, usually a really good game, and I think 2020 could be no different. I think we're going to be in for another really good matchup there. They'll play UNLV on September 19th. So, again, they don't really have another big non-conference game outside of the Iowa game. I don't necessarily blame them, though. I mean, if you're going to play a top-tier Power 5 team like Iowa every year, do you really want to play another big non-conference game plus have 9 conference games in the Big 12? So, yeah, I don't really blame them. That's one of the good things about the SEC and ACC with 8 conference games. I know a lot of people complain because you don't want to see a bunch of cupcake games, but at least you have the possibility of scheduling 2 really good non-conference games. Now, most teams in the SEC and ACC don't do that, but at least they have the opportunity. They should do that or move to 9 conference games, but it is what it is. Let's move into the schedule now. They open up Big 12 play on September 26th, then home against Texas Tech, a winnable game there, and then on the road at Kansas on October 3rd. So if they can get by Iowa, which will be very tough to do, Iowa has seemed to have their number in recent years, but if they can go on the road and pull off a potential upset there, maybe it won't be an upset. Who knows how it's going to be at that time. The conference schedule opens up with a couple of easier games, and they could be sitting there at 5-0 into the month of October before playing a really tough game on the road at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, I think, is one of the favorites to win the Big 12 this year, and one of the other favorites is Oklahoma, and they'll play on back-to-back. So it's a road game against Oklahoma State, and then it's Oklahoma on October the 12th, or October the 17th, I should say. They, of course, took Oklahoma to overtime last year. They get them at home this year. You got to believe they'll go into that game thinking they can win. And that could be a really big win. It could change their season if they're able to knock off Oklahoma in that game. After that, they get their bye week, and then they'll play Kansas State on a Thursday night at home. So they get a bye week, then a Thursday night at home against Kansas State. Follow that up on November 7th with a road game at TCU. TCU, of course, was down last year. I expect them to be improved at least some this season. Baylor at home on November 14th, the team that won or made it to the Big 12 championship game, I should say, last season. They get them at home. Texas on the road on November 21st, and West Virginia at home on November 27th. So as I've been saying, I feel like the top 3 teams in the Big 12 are Texas, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State in no particular order. Out of those 3 teams, Iowa State has to play 2 of them on the road. So I think that makes for a pretty tough schedule in the Big 12. You'd like to have 2 of those 3 at home to maybe give you a shot at making a run to get into that Big 12 championship game. But I think because of the way, unless one of those teams is not as good as we expect, but playing 2 of those teams on the road I think is going to make it difficult. Plus you have TCU on the road. They do play 5 home games, though, so that's good. You have Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Baylor, and West Virginia. So 5 home games, 4 road games. That will benefit them. And again, if you look at the overall schedule, only playing Iowa in the non-conference makes this schedule really not that bad. But again, if Oklahoma State, and Texas are the top 3 teams of the Big 12, playing 2 of them on the road, in my opinion, makes the schedule a little bit tougher. And I think that may make it pretty tough for Iowa State to get to that Big 12 championship game in 2020.